Now, I'd like to introduce our guest to everyone present here. His Excellency, Mr. Riho Kruuv, who is the Counselor of Security Policy and Arms Control Division, Political Department of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia. He has served as a Counselor of Ministry on Strategy Development Issues from 2004 to 2006. He has also served as the Deputy Under-Secretary of the Financial and Administrative Affairs Department. He completed his Master's in Arts in International Commerce and Policy from George Mason University, Virginia, the United States of America. He was also part of the program of the International Relations and European Integration conducted in the Estonian School of Diplomacy. Sir, we are thankful that you are here to guide us, teach us, and make us leaders of tomorrow. Can we have a huge round of applause for Sir? I now hand over the mic to Kshitij.
Good evening, sir. I am Kshitij Bansal from India, and he's Kilian from Germany. And we'll be acting as your moderators between our participants and you, so that you can share your vast ocean of knowledge with them.
I'll just say a few words on the structure, maybe. The whole discussion will be in the format of a town hall discussion. So that means we're going to cover a total of 3 topics with a strong focus on cybersecurity. Then we'll move on to terrorism, and we'll talk a little bit about climate change and environmental policy, as far as the European Union is concerned, for example. We will be taking questions in between those topics. So we'll ask all of you, after we finish one topic, if you have any questions only regarding this topic, please. We will take more questions, more general questions at the end. If you make a question that's not regarded to the topic, then please refer to a point that was made in the discussion. Okay? Perfect. We'd like to keep it a bit casual, so, I mean, we've got this outline, but feel free to diverge from it. We really want to have just an inspiring conversation and an insightful conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Estonian, I'm supposed to be good with technology, but I can't even turn off on the mic. So. But well, thank you very much for this kind invitation to me to be here today with you. I see a lot of nice, beautiful people here in this room, and I see also the countryside. So. A lot of Indians representing different countries here today. So is that the future of the world?
Definitely, definitely. This is the future leadership of our country, sir.
But you suggested that it will be like an informal discussion, so I lose a little bit my tie to make it also a little bit informal visually. But I understand that my topic is cybersecurity and some of the technology, and environmental issues will be terrorism as well. Okay, it's important to note that I am like ambassador of my country. I'm only generalist, so my knowledge about these specific areas are not very deep.
It's
so
absolutely fine. No
please
worries.
excuse me if I'm not able to provide you all the details and numbers. But I think it's quite remarkable that this event today, discussion about cybersecurity and technology, takes place exactly at the time when there is Sci-Fi 2016 conference in Delhi, in Taj Mahal Hotel. I was there yesterday and will go there tomorrow as well. Today I decided to be with you because bright heads talking about security issues, it's good, but it's even more important that the youth of India and the world also keeps track on what's going on, and I'm happy to be here with you. So maybe if you could make a start of this discussion.
Exactly.
So
We'll ask a couple of questions. We'll take questions from the audience. It's going to be very conversational. Yeah. So, as some of the delegates might know, the US intelligence community publishes a document called the Worldwide Threat Assessment every year. And since 2014, cyber warfare has ranked as basically as the biggest threat to the worldwide security community. And that was frankly unimaginable just a couple of years earlier, in 2009, say. Now, Estonia has had a first encounter with cyber warfare, I think back in 2007, right? dispute with Russia, I think. Maybe you could go over some details for the students so we can get a general understanding of basically what cyber warfare is and what it can mean for a country.
Well, maybe I first explain what happened in Estonia in 2007. Basically, the government of Estonia decided to relocate, not to remove, one of the monuments that came from the Soviet occupation period in our country. And this monument, it's called Bronze Soldier. It had been the location of many provocations between, Estonians and Russians living in Estonia. So basically the decision was that let's take this monument out of the center of the city, put it in this dedicated graveyard, which is specific graveyard for the victims of war. And this is what we did. But obviously it was politically motivated attacks against the government, both like all sorts of statements from the governments of Russian Federation and so on and so forth. And on the side, actually quite remarkable happened that there was a major launch of cyber attacks towards Estonian servers, both to the government servers and also commercial ones. And it was tracked down that all of these attacks actually came across the border from our eastern neighbor. And obviously, to create such an attack, I mean, it cannot be like a voluntary act of citizens. It's clear that there was some sort of political organization and movement behind it. So we survived. Few of the websites were down, but the work was restored. But as it always happened in the world, there is no bad without good. And we decided that, fine, we had this situation in Estonia, but let's take this lemon and make it a lemonade. So we immediately started gearing up our cyber protection systems. We created a lot of working groups of brilliant heads knowing the technology and the internet quite well, and we managed quite a lot. One of the achievements basically that came out of this cyber attack in 2007 was the allocation of NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Estonia now, and also Tallinn, the capital city of Estonia, is the location of European Union IT agency. So it shows that this attack was triggered to something good in our case, and I think we have maintained the status of being one of the most advanced countries in the world in terms of cybersecurity. So.
Very rightly you said, sir, that you are one of the pioneers when it comes to cyber safety. So my next question is associated with this only, that since Estonia has developed one of the most robust cyber safety infrastructure in the world, can you please elaborate on it for our participants so that they can know the intricacies of it? And moreover, if you could stress on how you're collaborating with NATO as well in this field, because there is this NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center as well. So how you are combating it on a unilateral as well as a multilateral note?
Well, basically, when we talk about cybersecurity, one might think that, okay, this is something that states or countries do. But when you talk about cybersecurity, it's actually the culture of steps that has to go through all levels of society. Like there are things that government needs to do just to keep their services running. There are things that private companies need to do, like banks and power station and other very critical enterprises for the whole society. And there are a lot of things that we as people, as citizens, can do to keep our own email accounts and mobile phones safe and our identities safe. So it's a very complex issue, and it's not easy to say, what are specifically the steps that we have taken. because it is it's like a cloud of many measures, which at the end should give you some level of protection. But it's important to say that, as it always is, like when somebody is making a weapon, the other side will develop even better weapon. And then it's like a little bit of race. So basically, it's a constant like marathon. It never ends. Like you develop your protection, and then there will be always people, maybe even groups of people or even countries that are willing to test their own abilities and the strength of your protection. So, and obviously in NATO, like this NATO cybersecurity center in Estonia, this is basically an institution to collectively develop some of the measures that are there to, first of all, protect NATO allies, including Estonia, and also share these things and technologies with our partners.
You said something very interesting, I think, when you talked about how the individual can protect him or herself from these cyber attacks. Now, when we look to other countries, such as the US, the debate seems to be quite a different one, but the concerns still seem to be valid. Talking about, for example, the Apple FBI case that we had in the beginning of the year, it seems that in the US, or in a lot of countries of the world, it's perceived that end-to-end encryption, completely encrypted communication, is something that governments usually don't want their citizens to have, because they're worried about real-world security concerns. Is there a balance that you need to strike? How does Estonia do it? Or are these opposite, security, liberty? We talked about this issue briefly in front of the General Assembly with the Canadian ambassador too. Is there really a fight between security and liberty, or can they live in harmony?
As much as I understand about this topic, there are basically two schools. One school is to say that everything has to be encrypted and there should be no backdoors. Then there is the other group who says that, well, there are terrorists around. We need to get some backdoor to go inside and take them down. Estonia is a strong proponent of the first kind of side, stating that, well, it's all about trust. We have to have trust in the system. We have to have trust in other countries and technology, and obviously, when it becomes aware that there is some like terrorist propaganda exposed in internet, Facebook, and other that kind of media, you have to go with the help of private sector and basically take this thing down. But we believe that you cannot have the backdoors to basically sneak around all sorts of firewalls, and we come to this big brother thing then, which seriously undermines the trust. In Estonia we have digital, like every one of us has like a chip card in the pocket. I have it too, and we do lots of things with this. We log on safely into our bank accounts. We can check our health data. It serves well as a travel document, but we can even use it for voting. Like in Estonia, we have had many municipal level elections, and also in one of it's been used for elections of European Parliament. And can you now imagine that you have this like a back door, and someone can like go in, manipulate with the results, or check your health data or things like that. So for us, it is very, very critical issue. We need to deal with these extremes, but there are many other ways to do it, and we shouldn't undermine the security and privacy.
So, since you addressed that we have terrorist propaganda spreading through the cyberspace as well these days, so I recently read somewhere that in Estonia particularly, the Internal Security Service noticed that there were more cases of radicalization nowadays, probably because the cyberspace is being manipulated too much. So how do you view this problem in the larger context of the threat of terrorism throughout the globe? And how do you think that this problem at the individual level can be addressed?
Well, usually there is this conception that terrorists use very, very sophisticated encryption. I think it was discovered the beginning of this year that when there were these terrorist attacks in Paris, actually open text messaging was used. So it's not always the case that you need actual like this backdoor, or you have to seriously compromise the security of this infrastructure to actually get to terrorists or tear them down. But as I said before, it takes a lot of cooperation. It takes cooperation between states, It takes cooperation between states and industry. It takes cooperation between states and media. And it takes cooperation between states and individuals to make this thing work. And if people see that there are those sites or people that spread kind of extremist or terrorist campaigns over internet, they should react. And it should be, you should go back to these people and basically find out who they are and deal with that properly. But it doesn't say that all this infrastructure or internet is bad, or we should tear down the firewalls.
Thank you very much. We will now be taking questions from the audience regarding cyber and terrorism in general, maybe, because that's
May I have just one more comment before we go to questions? I think I'd like to add a little bit about cyber hygiene. What is something that all of us should take care every day. It is about keeping safely your passwords. It is about not downloading all the files that have been sent to you by email. It is about not opening every internet links that are in your emails. And it is largely about all those apps that you download to your smartphones. Like I'm new in India. I came here only at the beginning of August, and I've been trying to settle my own life here in India, like trying to get payments to pay for cable TV, internet connection in my house, and things like that. And there is this fine company, Airtel, in India, and they promote heavily their app to what you can use to make easily the payments, right? It's Airtel Money, yes. I have nothing against this company, please don't get me wrong. But when I tried to install this app, I was, at least my Android phone always asks me, do you provide the permission of this app using certain data? And I went through the list what was asked, like identity, my identity, fine. Identity of the phone, that's fine. Information about the wireless network that I use, perfectly fine too. But then came other things like my contacts, my location, my SMSs, my photos, my media, and my files, and my camera. And then I start thinking about what's going on? Why would they need information to my files in my cell phone. Why would they need information about my SMSs? And I didn't download this app. I'm not suggesting that you should delete it in your cell phones, or there's something really terribly wrong with this app. But these are the things that every one of us should every day ask if you use your smartphones. Do I really need this app? What kind of information is asked from me to use this app? And is it really something worth it? And what are the risks? So this is, I think, very, very important, and something that we can all do every day in personal level to keep ourselves away from troubles.
Thanks a lot. I think we will come back to cyber maybe after taking some questions, because it's a very big topic for Estonia especially, I think.
I am presiding over as the vice chairman of the IMF. So my question is that when, again, coming to Airtel, these big enterprises looking forward for data, collecting personal data, and the fact that in most European countries, part of the EU, even affiliated with the EU, follow this policy of outsourcing of data, and as to how processing by these big firms, the data that is collected, the personal data being collected, is not outsourced to other countries or enterprises so that it is not manipulated. Again, such frameworks don't exist in India, and I'd say the world at large. So what model of future legislation should member states or the international community should follow for protection of such data?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not the specialist in this specific area, but this issue of data protection is actually always, and cybersecurity and things like that, it's on the table of many organizations. Like you have United Nations, they have a group of governmental experts discussing the rules and things like that. Then you have European Council, then you have European Union, and there are many like international conventions. I'm now borrowing some of the notes, like Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, and also in OSCE, which is Organization of Security and Cooperation of Europe. They have like cyber confidence building measures, discussion about that. But obviously this transfer of data is a very sensitive thing. We all understand that. Well, last night in this sci-fi conference, there was this inaugural speech was by Indian Minister of IT and Justice, Mr. Prasad. And he very rightfully pointed that data is new oil. So data is very, very valuable. And obviously what's valuable can be used for good reasons and bad reasons. So this data has become very, very critical issue, and obviously it makes sense to take a serious look what kind of data is actually available, what is necessary for companies, and don't give them data that they don't need, like this SMSs and my personal files. Why would they need it? And like to make sure that if you have like a regular crime, for example, you usually, I give a very bad example, but if somebody gets killed on the street, you know, you have this victim, you have this terrible person who like committed this serious crime, and then you may have also this weapon or something what was used. But if you talk about cyber crimes, it's very, very difficult to track down who actually did it, how it was committed. And it only undermines the importance of keeping good controls over the data so that you can basically provide security for your citizens and users in the internet and keep them away of some harm. So yes, there is this downside of being too protective, but then there is this justified concern which needs to be addressed as well.
I think Germany was next.
Sir, I indeed feel honored to be given this opportunity. Sir, my question is, we know these days cyber operations or the malicious ones or the malware that are usually instilled by hackers, they use this system in which they use several devices so as to create a vast network that is almost completely impossible to eradicate. So sir, how does Estonia defend itself from the same?
Well, as I said before, I mean, you don't have bulletproof solutions for everything. So from time to time, you still face some of the, cyber crime that you haven't seen before. I think some of the models of most common, like cyber attacks, like what is denial of service? It's one of them. Like basically you overload the server with so many requests that it cannot handle them anymore. So this is something like what was used against Estonia in 2007. But there's a lot of information around about specific malware and that get embedded to your computer, and it starts sending information, destroys the data, and does all sorts of things. So like you always try to be ahead of these culprits, bad people, but they are also very innovative. And it seems that you have attack, then you develop some sort of means to be ready for that attack the next time. And then there will be another attack using completely different set of technology or the vectors or attacks. So it's a constant fight every day. You need to think about cybersecurity and getting your servers protected and things like that. So there's no that kind of remedy available to solve all the issues. But it has to happen, like it has to be a coordinated effort of states, industry, and individuals to make this environment safer and work for everyone.
There are no proper laws regarding cyber warfare, and there's a body of law known as Just ad Bellum, and the Article 2.4 of UN Charter that states the use of force. So the use of force can be anything. It can be an armed force or it can be cyber force. So so what are your views on the implementation of laws it should be carried upon the cyber warfare? And how can we improve the cyber laws? How can we improve cyber laws regarding cyber warfare? That's my question.
Well, thank you for the question. I think there are many initiatives already in the world that are dealing with these issues. But I think I mentioned some of them, like this European Council, Budapest Convention on Cyber Crimes and things like that. But to this day, we don't have this universal instrument negotiated and enforced between the states to have a common understanding what is cyber war, what is the definition of cyber war. Is it only when countries launch some sort of cyber attack against one another? Is it does it also happen when, like a bunch of hackers working from the garage or basement are testing the integrity of the government servers in another country? Or is it even then when, like, a talented person wants to just look cool vis-a-vis their friends and starting like a major cyber attack against, let's say, servers of Pentagon in the United States? So I think this is ongoing discussion. We are not there yet, but probably the attacks against Estonia in 2007 were maybe the first kind of step which raised this issue on international level, and from now on we have moved ahead. I hope that in the future countries will find common ground on what are the right definitions, what are the codes of conduct, and how to develop, how to deal with these issues when these rules are violated.
Now, we take Israel's question now.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, talking about GhostNet and how its existence has been confirmed in the cyberspace. So, what has been Estonia's policy regarding the very issue and the negligence of the Chinese government regarding the existence of the GhostNet?
Now I have to apologize, but I'm afraid I didn't really understand the question. Can you please?
Sir, talking about the GhostNet and the existence of the very network, which has been confirmed by Skylabs back in 2009. What has been Estonia's policy regarding the very issue of GhostNet and the negligence of the Chinese government regarding the same?
So if I may, the primary issue being that the Chinese government time and again has denied the existence of such ghost nets, which creates a problem at the global level because there is lack of coordination because of it. Since one party doesn't even recognize the issue while the others are willing to deal with it. So how do you wish to pursue this issue at the global level then? What is Estonia's policy?
Well, as I said before, there seems to be like two schools. One school is for like to maximize the freedom of trade and speech and things like that, and then is the school of countries that are like for the sake of security and maybe their own control over their citizens and people, they want to tear down the encryption and things like that. So taking into fact that the existence of these different schools, and maybe there are even more, like some more schools, some of them like in between of these two, it's not easy to find a common solution. But you were specifically talking about
GhostNet from China.
GhostNet from China. Well, I'm not a specialist enough to go deeply into these kinds of specific cases, but I was posted to Canada before from 2009 to 2013, and to be honest, I mean, it was like everyday business in Canada, like Chinese hackers attacking Canadian banks and things like that. I mean, it's important to understand that well, everyone has sort of hope that countries will get together, like in UN level, for example, and they basically negotiate the framework, and that's it. So it solves all the problems. It's not the case. I mean, there are so many stakeholders active in this regard. I mentioned the industry, groups of people, like you have hackers, and even us individuals, like how we actually, what kind of information we spread from our own mobile phones or email accounts. So even if countries ultimately agree on something, the question is how these decisions and codes of conducts and rules will be like delivered down to the minds of every person in our planet, so that all of us more or less know that you cannot use the services of the public transport without a ticket, right? We all know that. So at some point, it takes time to get to understand that we all basically will follow the rules that it's not allowed to hack into the email accounts of other people, or it's not the right thing to do to spread virus using your own emails or things like that. obviously, like, and every computer should be equipped with a antivirus program or things like that. So there's a long way ahead. There's a long way ahead, and countries are only, yes, they are maybe like the tip of the iceberg, but it's about all of us to make this thing ultimately happen.
Now, India has a huge IT sector. A lot of the new Indian workforce is specializing in IT. Would you say that in this new age of maybe cyber wars replacing old wars, if you think that's that's where the trend is going, do you think that India will have a unique strength in this environment?
Well, I think that it's important to like differentiate cyber defense and cyber offense. I think every country should work hard to develop cyber defense, like being able to create environment safe against cyber attacks. But I'm not sure that every country should be very active trying to develop their cyber offense capabilities. Potentially, if you have a lot of bright minds, people educated on IT and other technologies, obviously it gives you an advance, and there is a potential for like nice pool of people capable of developing cyber offensive capability in India. But there's this question: is it needed? Is it like expected? Maybe it's better to stay on the cyber defense capabilities, and this is obviously something I can recommend.
So I'll bring you back to the larger theme of terrorism that we want to discuss with you. In this regard, I have this slight question: that how do you view Estonia's role in the European Union at large? Since a couple of weeks ago, I read this statement by the European Union chief who said that let us all speed up the process of creating EU standing army to defend ourselves, especially in this current era wherein EU is particularly threatened by terrorism. So how do you find Estonia's role in the EU and EU for the world?
Well, talking about this standing army, Estonia is not very big fan of it because we are part of NATO, and we don't see the need for like another major headquarters somewhere right beside NATO headquarters, trying to sort of do basically the same thing. But in terms of cyber or IT infrastructure, like taking into account this this background of Estonia, like being the first country knowingly on the attack of cyber war, like we have always been big supporters of joint effort, both within NATO and in European Union, to take the best out of these technologies. And it's not only related to cyber security, but it's also it also deals with using internet for the benefit of all of us in bigger way. Like our Estonian commissioner from Estonia, Mr. Andrus Ansip, former Prime Minister of Estonia, he's responsible for IT development in European Union, and he's working very hard to create this internal e-commerce market for European Union. So it's everyone more or less knows that in the United States you can basically buy everything over internet, right? Without any trouble, goods moving across the borders of state, like state of Maine, for example, to state of Texas. But as of now, it's not really possible in European Union, which is very strange. So there's lot of things to do to use this realm of internet and e-commerce to take it like to next level in many areas of the world. And I realized that internet is developing very, very fast in India, and it's good to see that so many people are getting now access to internet with the cell phones. So I think e-commerce and freedom of internet will play a very crucial role here in India as well. And once we get this free movement of goods and services in European Union, we will work hard to get the same regime between EU and India, so that you can easily buy things from Estonia, for example, over internet, and we can buy things from India over internet.
So thank you very much for this discussion on cyber and terrorism. We'll now move to the other block, to the other big block that I think we'll have to shorten a bit, that we wanted to talk about, which is climate change and environmental policy.
So in this regard, I had this slight question that since at the global level we do have this system of carbon caps which has been recently proposed in order to tackle climate change, but Estonia has been starkly opposing it for the past quite few years because they do not really agree with it. I primarily feel that it's because of your dependence on Russia for energy resources maybe, or if you could shed light on why you are opposing the system of carbon caps and what alternatives does Estonia have to offer to deal with climate change?
Well, now you struck me with a surprise, because I'm not aware that we are opposing it. But well, as of now, we are actually the country of benefiting the cleanest air in the world. So it's something that we highly treasure. But I'm not aware that we are against this initiative. I'm not sure that we are strong opponents of like binding rules for everybody, every country.
The European Commission proposed such carbon caps for the European countries, and Estonia as one country opposed those carbon caps. So it's in that light that I wanted to know as to how Estonia manages the climate change problem, at least domestically. Because it's rather more it's a more individual approach that can help to solve climate change, because we all are individually contributing to the problem as well.
I'm afraid I cannot really answer to this question, because I'm not aware of this opposition to this initiative in Estonia. Sorry.
Right, so we move on then. So Killian has a question, very interesting one to ask you.
Maybe you stick to cyber security. I'm more like a Cyberman.
So I was going to ask you on the role of developing countries when we look at climate change, but maybe one other interesting aspect of developing countries in regards not only of climate change but development as a bigger theme, maybe could be if you think that that some of the countries that you might call third world countries might skip the BRIC state and move and have really accelerated development due to cyber, and if Estonia sees itself as a new helping hand in this digitized world. I mean, when we look at Uganda, for example, the digitization there is eliminating one of the biggest obstacles in the economy, which is that every good has to be passed through multiple middlemen, and thus selling and through the internet making purchases directly from the manufacturer becomes possible, and maybe a new middle class can be fostered. So does Estonia see itself as a new leading power maybe in development aid?
We definitely don't see ourselves as a leading power in development aid. We are a very small country. We are only 1.3 million people. So it's maybe just one part of the Delhi, like 1/10 of it, maybe. So we cannot really do it all or do it alone. But development aid has been very important concept of our interaction with other countries, and since we regained independence, maybe not for the first 10 years, because we had so much trouble of our own then, but we are gradually stepping in, and we have always trying to help more other countries as well. Obviously, for us being there in Northern Europe and taken into the background of our history being occupied by Soviets for 50 years, we share a lot common. We have lot in common with some other countries, not that are not so that have not made so good transformation, like Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia. So we have been focusing more on these countries and trying to make change in these countries, and these countries also trust us more, because we've been part of the same thing. We have had similar history, but it's we are also looking further. Like one of the big recipients of Estonian development aid has been Afghanistan. We have equipped with some of the schools with computers, and we have done some training and things like that. So we try to give our fair share in international development and help to other countries. But we are not big and rich country, so we at least the wish and mind perspective is there, and it's gradually growing all the time.
So thank you very much. We'll ask our last question, and then we'll move to one or two questions from the audience, maybe.
Be a vote of thanks. One question from the audience, and then we can go on vote of thanks. So one question. Anybody for a question?
Spain.
Go- Any of the chairs or vice chairs, if there is a question? Yeah, please, Secretary General.
Don't ask me questions about the environmental
No.
things.
Strictly sticking to cybersecurity and terrorism. So my question is to, do with the way Estonia combats terrorism. Now, if we understand the scenario which exists in European Union and Europe at large, we need to understand that with a system of open and porous borders wherein members of the European Union can go from one country to another very easily, singular policies adopted by nations single-handedly cannot do much to combat terrorism. So, maybe Estonia's domestic policy or the way it deals with an issue like cybersecurity won't do much unless, its decision transcend and reflect a wider image in the larger decisions made by the European Union. So, how does, a country like Estonia push such policies when they are so adopted at the domestic level?
Well, till I think this summer, the issue of terrorism was kind of theoretical for us, but we actually lost a couple of people in this tragic terrorist attack in Nice, when there was this terrorist smashing the people with the truck. So a couple of Estonians were there, and they are now the victims. So that was the first tangible connection, for us with terrorism. But we have been very loud in terms of being part of the initiatives fighting against terrorism. I think there are many kinds of terrorism. Obviously, I mean, some is just like somebody is in bad mood, do something bad. But usually when we talk about terrorism, we back in our heads, we usually think about like this extremist or Islamic terrorism, something like that. So we've been active in Afghanistan, we've been active in Mali, we've been active in many parts of the world. Like we try to be part of international coalitions in fight against terrorism. And actually, Estonia was one of the first countries to put backs together with the United States after 9/11, when there was this attacks against World Trade Center. But fight against terrorism is not something like you wake up in the morning, you go out on the street, and then you declare that now I'm going to fight against terrorism. It's the cloud of activities or measures that are developed in many layers of international communication and government. And obviously there is this police force which has to be ready all the time. There has to be you have to be part of international alliances to be able to react quickly with help of other countries, or be able to help other countries when they need your help. So it's a very complex issue, and it takes a lot of effort to basically try to find all those little spots of terrorist behavior and put them together and have a dedicated activity against such things.
Hello. Thank you, sir. On behalf of Ryan International School, we would like to thank you. And before we end this, children, I'd like you to have a wild guess. Where does Skype come from? I know where Skype comes from.
It's Estonian innovation.
Skype is an Estonian innovation, and Skype still has its office in Tallinn. And actually, we were in Viljandi. We landed, we were on a school exchange program in Viljandi. So we took 15 students from Ryan International School to work in Viljandi this summer. And for us, it was a great experience because when we had students from Mumbai and Delhi. So when one of the students from Estonia said, Indian student asked this Estonian students, what's your population? So the Estonian child said, 1.3 million. So the Bombay child said, 2 buildings in Mumbai.
Yeah, usually when we start discussions with Indians, we make the joke that, we are very similar. We are both 1.3.
Yeah.
One is 1.3
Yeah, just
billion,
one, we
the
both
other is 1.3 million.
Just a zero, just a difference of few zeros.
Yes. But actually, when I may add few more words, I think this ICT and other technologies, these are the things that help to make a country much bigger than actually are the physical borders. Because when we regained our independence 25 years, nothing was really there. So we had beautiful developed neighbors like Finland, Sweden, and other Scandinavian countries around us. And then we thought that, okay, how do we ever catch up? Because this gap between us was so big. So we realized that in order to catch up, we need to do something very much differently. And we realized it was the time when internet just came out, when actually first PCs came out, and then we thought that, okay, that looks like a promising thing. And initially we were not good innovators. We were very quick adapters. And we took into use computers, internet, and we developed this personal chip card for every person. Yes. And that created environmental platform for all sorts of e-services. And now I think Estonian e-government services and e-governance is something to like a role model for many of the countries. And I'm very proud that we have a remarkable cooperation with the government of India in that regard. Your Minister of IT and Justice was in Estonia 3 weeks ago, very productive visit. And we are it looks like that Estonia is going to serve very well for Indian IT companies for access to European Union market. So we in Estonia and here in Delhi, we every day we promote Estonia as a good kind of a bridge from India to European markets. And now that it looks like that the United Kingdom is in a way out of European Union, we have seen that a lot of Indian companies are looking for new location in European Union territory. And we are there. So ready
you know,
to,
at
ready
the
to-
Tallinn airport, you still play that film, that how can you open a company within 2 hours and make it running. So if you want to start a company, you can sit on your laptop in Tallinn and within 2 hours at a cafe, because in entire Estonia, the Wi-Fi is free. You know, you can go anywhere in Estonia and most of the public spaces have free Wi-Fi. Kids, you have to realize this. We are talking about a country which 25 years ago learned what democracy was. And 25 years, that is just, 10 years before you were born. So it's not long time ago. In 25 years, this small country that first turned into democracy, and then they have a paperless government. That means any work that you have to do in Estonia, there are no paperwork. Their education system, of course they take a lot from Scandinavia, has improved so immensely, the amount of art, culture that they integrate into their education system. We were so impressed, and especially just imagine 25 years. Because, with India, we keep on always talking about this, we are not a very old country, we have just got our independence, 70 years. But it is just few young minds change the world. And that is why it's important. Actually, I think because Indians have very limited knowledge, and the reason also for us to get somebody from a Baltic country was Indians only know 4 places. Either they know London, they know Switzerland, they know America, and they know Paris. Because these are the 4 places where all the Bollywood films are shot. The rest, their knowledge about Indian students is very limited, And I would say even Americans also, if you really ask them, they come to Latvia and when they go back home, where did you go? We went to Europe. They also, guys, world is such a beautiful place and every essence of every country is so different. And for me, I think the most amazing thing about going to Europe is, and the idea of the European Union is amazing. When you put an Italian with a Danish, both of them have to follow the same rules. Because they're 2 extreme cultures we are talking about, because you can't compare a Norwegian with a Spanish. They're 2 different. And now everybody puts in together, all these countries left their nationalism and gave power to Brussels. And see, this continent in 70 years has transformed and gone ahead of human race. They're 60 years ahead of human race if you go to this continent and you experience Europe. Why are they so disciplined? Why are they so organized? Amazing. These are amazing achievements. Read about countries. And, that's one of the reasons we thought, it's interesting to have a perspective of Estonia. Please go and read about Baltic countries, that in such a small span of time, this amazing work these countries are doing. Really, we look forward, as an inspiration for our students to read about your countries and learn about leadership. On behalf of Ryan International School, I'd like to thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words. I tend to think that I am the ambassador of Estonia here in Delhi and India, but it looks like there are many, many, many more. And you're obviously one of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for making my work so much more easier.
Thank you. Anyways, on a lighter note, how has your experience been? Because I heard you've just moved to India. How has your experience been in New Delhi? Anything that's hit you so hard?
Well, obviously it's very different from our own environment back in Estonia. But I'm actually telling you the truth that I feel very comfortable here. This country is big in spiritualism. People are very kind and open-minded and willing to progress. And I think these are the traits that unite us. And in personal level, when I was still living in Estonia, whenever we wanted to go out with my family to have dinner, we usually went to Indian or Thai restaurants. So like food-wise, I'm in a paradise. So thank you very much, all of you, for making my stay in India so nice and comfortable. And I wish you all the best and good progress. If you work hard, this country will have a beautiful, beautiful future, and I wish you all the best in that role.
All the delegates, are you fit and fine? Yes, are you enjoying? Yes, something has gone in? Yes, minds are full or empty? Full. Are you going to take back the good memories? Yes, we would like to see you, yes, maybe 15 years or 20 years from now, representing at UN. At UN. Not like just India, but all over the world. Wish you all the best, delegates.
Excuse me, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for supporting us always.